Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishnapristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshakarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So welcome back to our classes on the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita. We're starting from the paragraph, the Bhagavad Gita 8.6. Okay. The Bhagavad Gita 8.6 also explains the general principle that makes it possible to enter the spiritual kingdom simply by thinking of the Supreme at the time of death. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajate ante kalevaram tam tamivaiti konteya sada tad bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his present body, in his next life he will attain to that state without fail. Now, first we must understand that material nature is a display of one of the energies of the Supreme Lord. In the Vishnu Purana, the total energies of the Supreme Lord are delineated. Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta Kshetra Gnakya Tatha Para Avidya Karma Samgnanya Tritiya Shakti Rishyate. The Supreme Lord has diverse and innumerable energies which are beyond our conception. However, great learned sages or liberated souls have studied these energies and have analyzed them into three parts. All of the energies are of Vishnu Shakti, that is to say, they are different potencies of Lord Vishnu. The first energy is Para, transcendental. Living entities also belong to the superior energy, as has already been explained. The other energies or material energies are in the mode of ignorance. At the time of death, either we can remain in the inferior energy of this material world, or we can transfer to the energy of the spiritual world. So the Bhagavad Gita says, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajate ante kalevaram tam tameva iti konteya sadata bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his present body, in his next life he will attain to that state without fail. In life, we are accustomed to thinking either of the material or of the spiritual energy. Now, how can we transfer our thoughts from the material energy to the spiritual energy? There are so many literatures which fill our thoughts with the material energy, newspapers, magazines, novels, etc. Our thinking, which is now absorbed in these literatures, must be transferred to the Vedic literatures. The great sages, therefore, have written so many Vedic literatures, such as the Puranas. The Puranas are not imaginative, they are historical records. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is the following verse Maya Mukta Jivera Nahi Swata Krishna Gnan Jivera Kripa Kaila Krishna Ved Puran. The forgetful living entities or conditioned souls have forgotten their relationship with the Supreme Lord, and they are engrossed in thinking of material activities. Just to transfer their thinking power to the spiritual sky, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas has given a great number of Vedic literatures. First, he divided the Vedas into four, then he explained them in the Puranas, and for the less capable people, he wrote the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, there is given the Bhagavad Gita. Then all Vedic literature is summarized in the Vedanta Sutra. And for future guidance, he gave a natural commentation on the Vedanta Sutra called Srimad Bhagavatam. We must always engage our minds in reading these Vedic literatures, just as materialists engage their minds in reading newspapers, magazines, and so many materialistic literatures. We must transfer our energy, our reading to these literatures which are given to us by Vyasadeva. In that way, it will be possible for us to remember the Supreme at the time of death. That is the only way suggested by the Lord, and He guarantees the result. There is no doubt. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmarayutya cha mayarpita mano buddhir mame vaishyasya shamshaya. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time continue your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. Okay? So we just read this verse from chapter 8, verse 6, where Krishna says, whatever one remembers when leaving the body, O son of Kunti, he will surely attain a similar state to that object of constant thought. So just as by remembering Krishna, we attain Krishna, similarly, by remembering something else, one attains that object, right? So our scriptures provide so many examples of how one should prepare for the end of life. In fact, this is why Krishna created the Varnashram system, so that one can tailor their lives in such a way that they can think of Krishna at the time of death, right? So, for example, the kings in the past, they were known as Rajarishis, the saintly kings. They would execute their duties, right? And once they're about to retire, they would hand over their kingdom to another king, and they would go off into the forest. They would go off into the forest so that they can take their minds off the worldly duties and they can prepare for the last vision of death. Right? So in the Gita, Krishna teaches us to live. Krishna teaches us how to live by this principle of working as a matter of duty, with detachment and offering everything unto Him. Where Srimad Bhagavatam teaches us how to leave this body. Okay? So there are so many stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam where great personalities, pastimes about great personalities are recorded to show us how to leave this body. In Canto 6, there is a very famous example of the Dichi Muni. Right? Indra was fighting with Vritrasur. Vritrasur was a demon, but in his past life he was a devotee. And he was cursed by Mother Parvati to take birth as a demon. There's a short story. But he was cursed to take birth as a demon. So now Indra was trying to kill him, but he failed in every attempt. So then Indra approached Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu said, go to the Dichi Muni, he will give you his bones, make a thunderbolt out of his bones, and then you'll be able to kill Vritrasur. So then the demigods went to the Dichi Muni. And when they went to him, the Dichi Muni is a very powerful personality. And he says that at the time of death, pain is so unbearable, right, that it takes the consciousness of the living entity away. He says that the body is only usable for a short time, and it may perish at any moment. So while it's possible, let me meditate on the Lord and leave this body, right? So he goes into deep samadhi, into deep trance. He starts thinking of the Lord, and he doesn't even feel the pain of death. Right? And then there's another example of Bhishmadev in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that he remembered Krishna at the time of death. He was lying on a bed of arrows, right? but he was waiting for the last vision of death. He wanted to see Krishna at the end. So in the Bhagavatam, it's described that he was waiting for Uttarayana, but many people misunderstand that he was waiting for the auspicious moment of Uttarayana, but actually he was waiting for the Lord who gave shelter to Uttara. Uttarayana, it means he gave shelter to Uttara and he took shelter in Uttara's womb to protect Parikshit Maharaj. So Bhishmadev is referring to this Uttarayana. He was waiting for the Lord. Right? Then there's also the example of Dhritarashtra. After living his whole life in the palace, after planning so much to kill the Pandavas, he lost his sons. Right? And then he's living in the same palace under the care of the Pandavas. So then Vidur comes and he says, "Are you foolish? All your life you planned on killing the Pandavas and now you're living under the care of Yudhishthira Maharaj. You should leave." So even Dhritarashtra was guided towards the end. He was guided to go to the forest, although not a pure devotee, but he made his way into the forest and gave up his body there. Right? Following Dhritarashtra, after some few decades, even the Pandavas retired. They handed over the kingdom to Maharaj Parikshit and they headed for the forest, again for the same reason, so they can think of Krishna at the time of death. Right? And now coming to the main personality of Srimad Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj, he asked Shukadev Goswami, what is the duty of a dying man? So the entire scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam, is citing so many examples of great personalities on how to leave this body. Right? So since the thought at the time of death is so important, one should practice remembering Krishna throughout his life while doing his activities. Then remembering Krishna at the time of death is possible. Right? And what we see from these examples of Bhishma Dev, of the Pandavas, even Kunti Maharani, Maharaj Parikshit, they all remember Krishna on a personal level. Yeah? And that is only possible when we have established a relationship, a connection with Krishna. So now remembrances can be of many types. Yeah? They can be a factual remembrance. It has no connection with the heart. It's just a recollection of a fact that you've heard in the past. That fact is of no use. Another type of remembrance can be a very rational remembrance. It could just be some logical remembrance. For example, having full proof of reincarnation. Even someone who's not a devotee of Krishna can have this information. But what is the use? Right? But the highest type of remembrance is personal remembrance. So this is when you remember a person. It could be anybody. Take an example on a material level. It could be anyone. It could be someone from your family, your partner, your children. When you remember this person, you remember their name, you remember their form, you remember their qualities, you remember all the great things that they've achieved, right? So we know this from experience that when we get attached to someone we love, emotions arise. And when emotions arise, love develops. And from that love, remembrance becomes very easy. So this is what Srimad Bhagavatam is full of. That when we chant and when we hear Krishna's holy name, attachment develops. And when attachment develops to chanting the holy name, we feel emotions, bhava. And from that bhav, prema arises, love. Okay? So even Kunti Maharani, she was so attached to the Lord. And when difficulties came about, her emotions intensified. That's how attached she was. And when her emotions intensified, she felt more love for Krishna. And that's why she asks, may these calamities come again and again, because it was making her love stronger. She had personal remembrance of Krishna. Okay? So then in the next paragraph, Prabhupada discusses that Krishna has three energies, Vishnu Shaktis. There is the spiritual energy, Devi Prakriti. There is the marginal energy, that is us, the Jivas. And then there's the material energy, Mahamaya, right? So the soul can either take shelter of Krishna's spiritual energy, Devi Prakriti, right? We discussed in chapter 9, Mahatmanas Tumam Partha, Devim Prakriti Mashrital. The Mahatmas take shelter of Krishna's Devi Prakriti, Radharani. Or they can take shelter of Krishna's Mahamaya and continue to remain as a conditioned soul, right? So we can either think of the material energy or of the spiritual energy. In fact, once there was a disciple of Prabhupada, he told Prabhupada that we are always thinking of Krishna, but sometimes we happen to think of Maya. And Prabhupada said, no, actually you're always in Maya, sometimes you're in Krishna consciousness. So that is our state. right? So how do we transfer our thoughts from material to spiritual energy? So Prabhupada says that it is for this reason that Srila Vyasadeva wrote the Vedas. Sorry. Yeah? So it is for this reason that Srila Vyasadeva wrote the Vedas. And to further explain the Vedas, he wrote the Puranas, he wrote the Upanishads. For the less intelligent class, he wrote the Mahabharata. But what is the essence of the Mahabharata? Bhagavad Gita, right? And then he summarized all the Vedic literatures and he gave a commentary called the Vedanta Sutra. The Vedanta Sutra are all the principles of the Vedic literature summarized. And then he further gave a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which is known as the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Vyasadeva really emphasizes that Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita are the two best literatures to study. They are self-sufficient. In fact, we even have examples in ISKCON that just by reading these two books, people have become pure devotees. Just by reading the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? So Prabhupada says that Krishna has given us ears. Krishna has given us a tongue. All we have to do is hear from pure devotees and chant Krishna's name, and we'll become a pure devotee. Yeah? Shukadeva Goswami also says the same thing. Shrinvatam swakatha Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridayanta swaya bhadrani vidunoti suhritsatam. That the Lord is sitting in our heart as our supreme well-wisher. The moment a devotee starts hearing, starts relishing the holy name, Krishna starts cleansing the heart of all material desires, of all material contamination, and he helps a person become a pure devotee. Yeah? So Shravanam and Kirtanam is the foundation of Smaranam. Okay? So now, when somebody hears this verse, that if you think of Krishna at the time of death, you'll attain Krishna, they normally think that, let me enjoy life, and then at the end, I will think of Krishna, right? But Prabhupada says in this introduction, we covered it earlier on, that if someone has not practiced remembering Krishna while struggling in existence, how will they remember Krishna when struggling at death? Yeah? So the heart needs to experience Krishna as the greatest object of shelter. Last week when Mika Mataji gave a class, she gave an example of a child. Right? For a child, the greatest object of shelter is the mother. Because the child has previously experienced emotional support, no matter what difficulty comes about, the child will run to the mother. The child will not go to anybody else. The child only wants the mother. Similarly, death is also a danger, and the mind will take shelter wherever it has taken shelter before. So if the mind has not been trained to take shelter of Krishna, how will the mind think of Krishna at the time of death? Right? We have so many obstacles regularly in life, so we need to train our mind to think of Krishna. We cannot trick Krishna's laws. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam is not to be tricked. Right? Prabhupada says that all our sadhana, all our spiritual practice will be tested at the time of death. We can cheat the entire world. We can pretend to be a pure devotee, but at the time of death, the true colors will come out. If you push a sugar cane through the presser, what comes out? Sugarcane juice. Similarly, when a devotee is put through the presser, when he's squeezed at the time of death, his devotion will come out. And if someone is pretending, that will also come out. Yeah? So whatever is inside will come out. Now, what if someone says that I've served Krishna all my life? What if I cannot remember Krishna at the time of death? So Krishna says, I will enter into the heart of the devotee and I will grant him remembrance. Now, we have a very recent example last year of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj. Right? He's dedicated his entire life, his mind, his intelligence, his body, and Krishna's service. At the time of death, in his last few moments, he's unconscious, but his hand was still worshipping Krishna. Who gave him this remembrance? Krishna gave him. Krishna says, I enter into the heart and I grant the remembrance. Yeah? So Krishna's instruction constantly throughout the Gita is to engage the mind. He says here in 8.7, Mam anusmara, think of me, yudhyacha. Chapter 9 he says, Man mana bhav mad bhakta. Chapter 18 he says, Man mana bhav. His constant instruction is that we must engage our mind in Krishna's service. The intelligence is convinced. We can read Shastra, we can contemplate it, we can read it in details, but we must apply it. So the application comes with the mind. Okay? So Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion says that always remembering Krishna is not a part of sadhana bhakti. We are sadhakas. We cannot remember Krishna all the time, nor can we pretend. It happens automatically when we advance in bhakti. As sadhakas, when we do an activity with the intention to please Krishna, it is as good as remembering Krishna at our level. For example, you could be making garlands with the intention to please Krishna. But while you're making the garlands, your mind is wandering everywhere. You're cooking, but you're cooking with the intention of pleasing Krishna, but while cooking, your mind is wandering everywhere. But because the activity is done with the intention to please Krishna, at our level as sadhakas, that is as good as being Krishna conscious. But gradually, we will increase our remembrance. Yeah? So, yeah, just my last point. Keshav Maharaj says that when we love Krishna more than this world, then he takes us out of this world. Okay? So, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Please forgive me if I've made any offenses, if I've said something wrong. Hare Krishna.